Coming up on Lawmakers, Georgia's Hispanic community plans a work stoppage in reaction to immigration legislation approved by the House today. The Senate passes out its version of the FY07 budget. And the Senate votes to give judges the option of increasing penalties for hate crimes. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Nwandi Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, the Senate approves the latest sales tax holiday scheduled for August.
And the House fails to pass a measure that would have restricted the use of all-terrain vehicles, or ATVs, by minors. But our lead story tonight, the impact of immigration legislation. Today, the House of Representatives passed Senator Chip Rogers' comprehensive immigration reform legislation. Senate Bill 529 was added to a supplemental calendar this afternoon and passed the House after nearly 2 hours of debate. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman joins us live from the Capitol with more. Jesse.
Well, Nwandi, this has certainly been one of the most emotionally charged issues of this legislative session. This bill would require proof of citizenship to receive many social services. It would also provide for tough laws on human trafficking. The bill passed the House today by a vote of 123 to 51. Here's some of the floor debate as well as reaction from the sponsor of SB 529, Senator Chip Rogers.
You don't get clannish and stick to your own and your own kind, not bother about learning the language, not bothering about those things such as patriotism, love of country, love of the neighbor, and making a positive contribution on the United States of America.
We as lawmakers are attempting to somehow resolve these tensions we're experiencing, these tensions that are very complicated and very multifaceted. And sadly, from my perspective, Senate Bill 529 purports to be our solution.
As many in this House line up in this election year waiting to vote for the bill because it sounds tough and polls well, I urge you to consider, as I have, that people answered yes when you asked if they favor immigration reform, but answer no if you think the provisions offer any real solutions.
Well, that's the greed, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about the dollar. It's all about the business community and people who need them. Yes, the agri-industry in this state needs these people, but what part of illegal do they not understand? And at some point, somebody's got to realize that.
It was a long road. We are obviously happy that it passed. The margin, the bipartisan support was all pretty much what we expected, but nonetheless fulfilling. So we're very happy with where we are with this bill.
Now, many opponents of this bill are not giving up the fight. The Senate has to agree to the House changes or there will be a conference committee. Some opponents say there will be a court challenge. Others still are organizing a work stoppage for tomorrow, kicking off with a rally tonight. We will have more on that tomorrow on Lawmakers. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
In other news, the Senate today voted to allow judges to increase sentences in hate crime cases. Georgia's original hate crimes law was ruled unconstitutional in 2004. Today, Senator Vincent Fort successfully amended a routine court bill to put hate crime language back into law. At one point, Senator Judson Hill asked if all crimes couldn't be considered hate crimes.
I think the senator needs to understand that I said this in committee. I'm going to repeat it because it's very, very important. It's critical to understanding this issue. We have to look at hate crimes as a form of terrorism. When someone attacks someone because of their race or ethnicity or otherwise, they're trying to send a message to that entire group, just like terrorism does. It's trying to tell everybody. When 9/11 happened, the terrorists who attacked the United States were trying to tell all Americans that we can come at you anytime, anywhere, any place with impunity. So I would suggest to you, Senator, that in this instance, hate crimes are terrorism. They're trying to send a message to terrorize.
If I get shot because somebody wants my wallet, or I get shot because of my race, isn't the end result the same, that I'm still shot?
If you are attacked because you're white, by someone of a different ethnicity, if you're attacked because you're white, because people selected you for that purpose, then a message is being sent not only to you and your family, but to all people like you in your community. And we've looked at this, and research has shown that hate crimes cause a greater disruption in the community than otherwise would be the case.
I still have issues with this bill, but in the goal of trying to make something that you don't agree with at least more palatable, I would urge you to adopt my amendment, which changes the mandatory shall on the penalty to may. But true to my beliefs in 2000, I will vote against the amendment after it's amended. I mean, that sounds, I just don't support the enhancement. I think that crime is crime, and for whatever the motives for crime are, it's hard to dig into the heart of somebody and figure out what the motives are, but when you're hurt, and I think everybody's punishment should be the same.
I believe in this Senate, and I believe some of you are going to, and I'm not saying that you can't vote no and not be someone who believes what you're doing, but I know some of you who are sitting out there arguing with themselves, can I do this? Do I want to do it? Is it the moral thing to do? And can I politically do it? You can.
The Fort Hate Crimes Amendment passed 30-17. The Wiles Amendment also passed, which allows but does not require judges to enhance sentencing in hate crimes. The original bill, House Bill 1421, passed 30-24, and it goes back to the House. Well, the Senate passed the FY07 budget by substitute today. They created a committee as a whole to discuss this bill, which meant they followed committee rules for debate instead of the usual floor rules. Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson chaired the committee on House Bill 1027. David Zelski joins us live with a few of the Senate budget changes. David.
Well, Gerald, there were several changes to the House version, but the most notable came in the Department of Human Resources. Money was removed from trauma centers, but they added funds to help unlock the waiting list for the mentally disabled. Senate Appropriations Chair Jack Hill began with a budget summary.
In this budget, you'll find bonds for prison renovation, for security, for GFA bonds for communities around the state, for our Georgia ports, some $19 million, for the World Congress Center, for mental health, hospitals, and last of all, for education for our K-12 system. There's over $440 million in new construction for our growing state.
Senator Renee Unterman chaired the subcommittee to discuss the Department of Human Resources. She began by talking about the importance of unlocking the waiting list for mentally handicapped Georgians.
1,500 additional slots for a grand total of 3,000 slots in this program. This is truly unlocking the waiting list and enabling more needy folks to have access to programs and therapies, helping them to have and accomplish a higher quality lifestyle. This to me and to most of the legislators, I think that if you've been down here for a while, you've always seen name tags and you've seen people in wheelchairs and the mentally retarded folks coming down here begging for money. To me, this is a monumental step that we're actually putting our money and our dollars where our mouth has been and where our heart has been.
Unterman later responded to an amendment from Senator Valencia C. to add $4 million in trauma care funds back to the Senate version that were taken out of the House version.
We already know we're in a desperate situation with the trauma services. It's just a question of how those services are going to be funded and the structure. This $4 million was put in just as seed money, I guess you would call it, to set up a program about trauma services. And the money could have been $100,000.
Now, the Senate voted down the C amendment, but passed their version of the budget, which then went back to the House, where the House disagreed. So it now goes to conference committee. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Well, back to school shoppers can enjoy another sales tax holiday weekend this summer. That's because the Senate today passed House Bill 1219.
It is a positive thing for all of our citizens as they get ready to go back to school in the summertime and making sure that they have an opportunity to buy goods sales tax free. This year, the exemption goes from 12:01 a.m. on August the 3rd, 2006 to 12 midnight on August the 6th, 2006. The same exemptions and same products actually apply as they have traditionally. And of course, there is a significant incentive for those purchasing Energy Star efficiency type standard appliances and what have you can receive these products that sell for a price of greater than $1,500 or less per product and must be purchased from a non-commercial home use will be exempt as well.
The sales tax holiday bill passed 49-0 and goes to Governor Perdue. The House today defeated a plan to restrict the use of ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, by children. Senate Bill 400 prohibits the use of ATVs by youngsters under 10, requires operators under 16 to take a safety course, and requires that child riders be supervised by licensed drivers over the age of 18. Representative Chuck Sims told the House that the bill is necessary to save lives, but many argued that it would impair the ability of young people to use the vehicles for farm chores and restrict family freedoms. Here's a sample of today's debate, beginning with Representative Sims.
Over 178 people have been killed in the last 5 years on ATVs. Most of these have been children, and most of them have been involving them on roads or the side of the road or the shoulder of the road. What we're trying to do here is to get some ATV safety legislation out there that will improve the safety and will also make parents more responsible for their children and knowing where those children are when they're riding these vehicles. Let me tell you something, folks. In my district, I had 5 children killed on one of these things at one time.
What will probably happen is the father will probably, or mother, could put the child on the ATV with them and to have fun, go and mess around a little bit on the ATV, and if a wreck occurs then, that child's going to be smashed between the steering wheel and the parent, or going to be thrown off the back of the ATV. I think that's a little bit more dangerous, but in the bill it says only one person can be on an ATV. And that doesn't even say on public lands. That could be private property, only one person's allowed. So you can't even take your child for an ATV ride to check the mail from your driveway across your private property and check the mail.
Senate Bill 400 failed to pass the House. The vote was 54-100. That measure appears to be dead for this session.
An attempt to change the public safety laws to require seatbelt use in pickup trucks was unsuccessful in the House today. The amendment was to be attached to Senate Bill 454, which corrects an error made in a public safety bill passed last year. Representative Joe Wilkinson explains.
We were going to have all the vehicles that came under public safety painted as like state patrol cars. That was not the intent. We wanted to keep the Capitol Police cars, the Motor Carrier Compliance Division cars in their own distinct colors. So this simply changes that. So the state patrol cars are remain blue and gray. There's also a portion in here that would allow the commissioner some flexibility to keep, go from 3 to 5 solid colored cars in any of the 48 state patrol stations.
According to Representative Wilkinson, by not repainting the public safety vehicles, the state will save $350,000 this year. Representative Mary Margaret Oliver said her amendment requiring the use of seat belts in pickup trucks and SUVs would save $21 million. Representative Oliver said it was time to extend this safety requirement to all drivers since former Speaker of the House Tom Murphy had blocked previous passage of similar legislation.
In my experience, he was opposed to seat belts in trucks. And he came from a generation that was a common view. He came from a part of the state where that was a common view. The former Speaker's neighborhood now is a suburban neighborhood. And I believe that the people of Georgia feel differently at this point. 88.5% of them do anyway.
Chairs of the opinion that the amendment is not germane. The amendment relates to seat belts in pickup trucks. The main bill relates to patrol markings on the side of a vehicle. Chair does not believe those are directly related and will rule the amendment non-germane. We may one day vote on that, but the former Speaker and I have something in common besides the fact we're from West Georgia.
Senate Bill 454 passed 158-1 and now goes to the governor for his signature.
The House agreed to expand the security functions of those who guard the state's nuclear facilities. Representative Barry Fleming told the House that the new provisions were needed to prevent potential terrorist actions.
It would allow the Georgia Power security people to detain persons, if necessary, on their property who had entered the property illegally and without permission until the local law enforcement officials get there to take care of the situation. It would also allow them, it is an imminent threat, to go onto adjacent property what we're worried about in that situation is in today's environment with terrorism, you can have a shoulder-fired missile, you can have rockets, you can have mortars that could be coming from the property next door, and if there is that imminent threat, then the trained personnel, the security people, would be able to go to that adjacent property and deal with that. These personnel are trained at the highest standards. We had testimony in committee describing that their training is even superior in some instances than our own law enforcement officers.
The House adopted Senate Bill 532, 142 to 8. The committee substitute to the bill now returns to the Senate.
Well, in the future, Georgia high school athletes should be able to play in all-star games without being penalized. That's because the Senate today agreed with the House on HB 1241.
The Georgia High School Athletic Association at times has proven to be very rigid and unbending on some of their rules to the point of not meeting the common sense test. What this bill will do will allow for high school athletes who have the ability and the chance to play in all-star games, will allow them to do that at all-star games around the country without losing their eligibility to play for their school teams here in Georgia.
We have, ladies and gentlemen, a problem in our schools. There is an African proverb that says, "The ruin of a nation begins in each home." Well, I dare say that the ruin of some of our schools is beginning in our homes as well. And what this amendment purports to do is to hold parents responsible for the actions of their unruly, ill-behaved, disruptive, fighting students using foul language, fighting on buses, and otherwise being generally disruptive. Make it a misdemeanor at the discretion of school officials, the principals, and or law enforcement personnel to charge parents with a misdemeanor, punishable up to a $1,000 fine at the discretion, of course, of the judge, and jail time in the event that they have 2 or 3 offenses.
Senator 29th is recognized.
Move for germaneness of the bill.
The amendment is not germane. It's out of order.
House Bill 1241 passed without opposition. Again, the Miles Amendment was ruled not germane. The bill goes to the governor.
The Senate today agreed with the House to exact a heavier toll on those who don't pay their tolls. Here's Senator Judson Hill.
HB 1190 was requested and is here on behalf of the State Tollway Authority, which is trying to address some big problems with collecting substantial unpaid tolls and fees. Last year alone, they had over 900,000 of remaining outstanding tolls and fees, and this legislation provides a more effective way and administrative process for the authority to collect those who repeatedly ignore violation notices.
The toll legislation, House Bill 1190, passed without opposition and goes to the governor for his signature.
Contractors dealing with the Georgia Department of Transportation will have to keep on schedule or risk not getting new DOT contracts. Senator Jim Whitehead explains.
House Bill 1090 deals with contractors doing public work for the state agency that have contracts that are running 25% behind schedule due to the fault of the contractor. You do have an amendment in there where we do, and I'll refer to that, where we are placing the word agency between state and public so that it does not affect cities and counties. I probably have told you, or you've heard of a deal in our county at Furious Ferry Road that is running right now over 750 days behind schedule. And what this says, this is a bill authored by Representative Harvin. It says that if a contractor is 25% behind, until he brings that back up to current, that he cannot bid on another contract.
House Bill 1090 passed 42-0 and goes to the governor.
Yesterday on Lawmakers, we reported on a forum held at the Carter Center in Atlanta dealing with federal immigration reform. Election issues such as voter ID and paper receipts from electronic voting machines have been controversial issues in Georgia, and the Federal Commission on Election Reform has weighed in on both of those issues. Lawmakers' Jesse Freeman has more.
The event at the Carter Center included a panel discussion and documentary viewing. The Federal Commission on Election Reform was co-chaired by former Secretary of State James Baker and former President Jimmy Carter. Carter shared committee opinions on issues like voter ID.
We recommended a uniform way to have people
present voter identification when they go to the polls to cast their ballot.
Congressman Jim Marshall also served on the commission.
To the extent that the law discourages people from registering, discourages people from getting the ID that's necessary in order to vote, it's bad.
Senator Bill Stevens is running for the office of Georgia's Secretary of State.
I think that the photo ID law here in Georgia will be implemented hopefully in the fall elections of this year.
Since Georgia's photo ID law went into effect, this bus, owned by the Georgia Department of Driver Services, has been traveling around the state, and the department has been providing photo IDs to Georgians. Since the IDs are free for voting purposes, they are in line with the Commission's recommendations.
I'm glad the bus does go to nursing homes and other places, retirement centers where it's needed, but probably more important than that is that in the new photo ID bill, we require that there be a place in all 159 counties, if not multiple places, that one can go to get a photo ID.
The Commission also addressed the issue of paper receipts.
The voter views the receipt, approves it, but does not keep it, because you wouldn't want somebody to be coerced into producing a receipt as to how they voted. But it is there in case we need to do an audit of the electronic voting machines.
Senator Stevens' paper receipt legislation is expected on the House floor on Friday. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Jesse Freeman.
The House today decided to repeal a law that required certain General Assembly personnel to post bonds in order to maintain their employment. Representative Earl Earhart explains.
This one's not a dangerous proposition unless you're the Secretary of the Senate or the Clerk of the House. In the dim past, we used to require that they have a bond in the sum of $5,000 payable to the governor and conditioned upon their faithful discharge of the respective duties. But, Robbie, have you got your bond in place? It wasn't enough.
Senate Bill 260 passed the House without opposition. It now goes to Governor Perdue for his signature.
Well, Governor Perdue this morning signed a resolution making March 23rd Chiropractic Day in Georgia. Representative Alicia Thomas Morgan presented that resolution this morning in the House.
It is my privilege this morning to introduce some very special guests that we have in the gallery. The governor of our state, Sonny Perdue, just signed a proclamation making today Chiropractic Day in Georgia. And we are joined by chiropractors from all over the state. So please stand and be recognized by the members of this House. Welcome to your state capitol. Thank you for the work that you do. Passing laws for your state is hard work, so we may be coming to see you this morning because we need some work done on our backs. And I want to give a special thank you to Dr. Hillier from my district, and thank you all for being here, and congratulations to you. Welcome to your capital.
The House today approved a study commission to explore the possibility of licensing direct entry midwives to assist mothers who decide to deliver their babies at home or in birth centers. Passage of House Resolution 1341 today coincided with Home Birth Day at the Capitol. Representative Stephanie Binfield explained the legislation to the gathering of home birth advocates.
This committee is going to consider whether to allow midwives who are not nurses but are certified by national midwifery groups to be licensed under Georgia law to supervise home births in Georgia. And home birth is safe. Let me stress that. Home birth is safe. There was a study done by the British Medical Journal in 2000, and it showed that home births are as safe for low-risk women and involve far fewer interventions than low-risk hospital births.
Midwives deal with a continuum of care. That means they don't just care about at the moment that you are delivering the baby, but prenatal care is as well as what's going on in the family. How can they be a support to the family to make sure there's a holistic approach to maternal care.
House Resolution 1341 was among the privileged resolutions passed in the House this morning. It now needs the approval of the governor.
The Senate Judiciary Committee this afternoon voted down a bill that would set the marriage age to 18 and prevent pregnant minors from marrying as well. The committee was split 3-3 on the issue, and Chairman Preston Smith cast the deciding vote. He said the bill had too many complications for his mind. One issue was jurisdiction. The bill required that parents appear in court unless they lived in another county or state. Senator Smith was concerned whether a parent's permission in another county or state might not be valid in the other. Senator Seth Harbor Clark wondered if the bill would discourage marriage when a teen becomes pregnant. But bill sponsor Representative Bobby Franklin and other supporters said the bill would protect minors from predators and strengthen families.
Yes, there's a large segment of the people using that exception are the people who are preying on these young children, committing statutory rape, and then pressuring them into marrying them so as to hide their crime of statutory rape.
When the kids are calling the shots, you're going to have problems. The pregnancy exemption here in Georgia, one of the few in the entire country, effectively allows, if a parent says you can't get married, the children can circumvent the parent's authority by simply getting pregnant. You create essentially an incentive to get pregnant underage. In addition, you allow the children to circumvent the parent's authority. This bill is effectively like a huge family therapy intervention for the state to reassert parents' authority.
The senators who supported the bill were disappointed, saying it would have brought Georgia in line with every other state in the country. Well, the commander of Operation Desert Storm, General Norman Schwarzkopf, was honored by the House and Senate today. Here are the general's remarks during his Senate visit.
I am indeed thrilled to be standing here and to hear that resolution. You mentioned the fact that I commanded a great army in the Gulf. It's 541,000 great Americans were over there with me. They didn't do it alone. Believe me, they had a lot of help from a lot of people back here at home, and we should never forget that. Many of those people who were with me over there are over there right now, and they deserve our support also. When you look at the casualty rate of Desert Storm, we only lost 18 people. Already they're over 2,000 and losing more. They desperately need your support. The reason why I'm here is because an awful lot of the units that I've served with in my life, I'm very, very proud of, were infantry. Infantry right where we take the battle in the trenches with the enemy, root them out if we have to, and risk our lives on a daily basis. That's sort of what an infantryman's job is all about. This monument that you're putting up is long overdue. We had fantastic infantrymen in museums all over the world doing all sorts of wonderful things. So I'm really, really proud of the state of Georgia that you would choose to recognize the contribution of infantrymen, because they really, truly deserve your thanks for protecting our country. Thank you very much for the resolution, and God bless you.
And coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, it will be another very busy day under the Gold Dome. The Senate is scheduled to debate eminent domain and sexual predator legislation, while the House is expected to take up a bill that would pave the way for Georgia's electronic voting machines to produce a paper audit trail. We'll have those stories and more tomorrow night at 7. If you've missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Prep Sports Plus. That's coming up next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for this, the 36th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Nwandi Lawson.
And I'm Gerald Bryan. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.